This program is presented and distributed by Keep the Faith on the web at www.keepthefaith.org.
Thank you very much, Bill. Phil shouldn't be jealous. I used Sicilian formula to keep my to keep my hair black. No, just soap and water, that's all. And the good Lord, thanks to your prayers, the doctor tells me, I don't know where the growth went to, but it's gone. See? So we all have to take a little bit of the cross. But today I'm going to talk on the Antichrist revisited and updated. See, in my book I gave you a series of signs, shadows of the coming Antichrist. But since that book was written, a lot of other shadows have showed up, especially in this church which we used to call the Church Militant, but has now become the Church Milquetoast. Unfortunately, see, even though we still love it, we have to put on a fight to get the authorities there back to what they should be doing. And we'll see that they're doing a lot of things that we don't want them to be doing as I go through the paper. But first, for a little review, since it's on the Antichrist, who is the Antichrist? The Antichrist, as St. Paul, Daniel in the Old Testament, Christ, St. Paul, St. John in his letters, and St. John in the Apocalypse tell us, he'll be a human person who will embody the spirit of infidelity to God par excellence. He will pose as the true Christ and connive to lead the whole world into apostasy from God, from Christ, and from the Holy Church. How do we know that he will be a person and not a movement, as some people say, well, the Antichrist will just be a movement? Well, the obvious answer to that is no movement gets anywhere without a leader. Just think of Nazism, just think of fascism, think of any movement. You've got to have a leader, otherwise the movement falls apart. How do we know that he will? We said that. Well, Daniel the prophet already saw in a vision the coming of the Antichrist and was given a revelation of the evils that will be with us at the end of time. Here's what Daniel predicted as he sees this tremendous vision, and the angel and the powers of heaven are telling him. And he sees this 10 nations there, 10 kingdoms, 7 of them fall, 3 are left, and all of a sudden there rises this special type of a man who becomes the head of the 3. And he doesn't get there by force, he gets there by chicanery, flattery, by subterfuge. And so here's what Daniel says. And another person shall rise after the 10 kings, who will be reduced to 3. And he shall be diverse from the first. And he shall subdue the 3 kings. And he shall speak great words against the Most High. And he shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hands until a time and times and a half a time. But judgment shall sit finally against him, and that judgment shall take away his domination, and he will be consumed and destroyed unto the end. Now, a couple of things into that. He's going to be able to take care of as it says here, he's going to persecute the saints. Naturally, wear out the saints of the Most High. That's going to happen. That's predicted. Again, he will be given power over many nations and kindreds. What does that mean? The Father tells us that the Antichrist will be so learned that Satan will give him a perfect knowledge of every language of every race in the world, so that he can go to any country in the world and be able to talk their language perfectly. We know that happens when the devil possesses people. One of the first signs you check that the person is possessed is that he's talking, or she is talking perfectly a language they never learned. And yet the accent, the grammar, everything. Because it's Satan. It's the devil in the person that's possessed, that's talking that language. Well, since the Antichrist is going to be the agent of the devil doing his work to destroy the church, he will have that power. And the Fathers tell us he will be one of the most engaging speakers in all the world. He will be the con artist par excellence. A greater orator than anybody else, greater speaker, except only Christ our divine Lord, whose followers said, never did man ever speak like this. Well, he will have the art of persuading and attacking and seducing people. In the end, of course, he will be destroyed and consumed by the breath of Christ. But Daniel goes on some more, a little further on, and gets more into detail. So you notice, the prophecy of the Antichrist is not something new in Scripture, because all the way back to Daniel, and Daniel, if you remember, was taken into captivity when the Jews were taken by Nebuchadnezzar into a 70-year captivity, when Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians destroyed the temple, and Nebuchadnezzar built a statue to himself that was called the Abomination of Desolation. The Antichrist is going to do the same thing. He will build a statue to himself when he gets to be control of the world and demand adoration, and those that don't adore him will be persecuted and killed. So, way back, this prophecy has been coming to us from Revelation. Daniel describes more in detail what the Antichrist will do after he comes into complete power over the whole world. And I quote, "And there shall stand up in his place a vile person, to whom they shall not give the power of the kingdom, but he shall arrive at the kingdom privately, peacefully, and obtain the kingdom by fraud and flatteries." Is this on? Yeah, all right, good. "And such as do wickedly against the covenant of God shall he corrupt by his flatteries. But the people that do know their true God shall be strong, and they will eventually prevail and succeed to do exploits. And the king shall do according to his will." This new king is the Antichrist. "And the king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things, and shall prosper. And armies shall stand on his side, and they shall defile the sanctuary of the strength." The sanctuary of the strength is God, the temple of God. "Sanctuary of the strength, and shall take away," this is a very important point, "they shall take away the continual sacrifice." John the evangelist says that in the Apocalypse too, that the holy sacrifice of the Mass, which is the continual sacrifice, will not be allowed by the Antichrist to be celebrated publicly. We'll have to go back underground at the time of the catacombs to have Mass, or like in England, chase around into different homes, hoping we're not caught by the Antichrist and his minions to say Mass. He shall take away, as he puts it. Where is it? And the army shall stand on his side, and they shall defile the sanctuary of strength of the true God. And he shall take away the continual sacrifice, and place there in the sanctuary of the temple the abomination unto desolation. The statue of the Antichrist will be placed there. And it ends up this way: "And he shall prosper until the indignation of God is accomplished." Now, what does the word Antichrist mean, and where did we get it from? The word Antichrist appears only one place in the whole of Scripture, in the epistles of St. John, the beloved disciple. In his first epistle, when warning the faithful against false teachers, St. John wrote this: "Dear children, it is the last hour, and you have heard that Antichrist is coming. So now many Antichrists have arisen, whence we know that it is the last hour. These many Antichrists, have gone forth from us, but they were not of us. For if they had been of us, they would surely have continued with us. But they were to be made manifest that one of them is of us. He is the Antichrist," and he uses the word, first time it's used in Scripture, and the only place. "He is the Antichrist who denies the Father and the Son. And every spirit that severs Jesus is not of God, but is of the Antichrist, of whom you have heard that he is coming and is now already in the world. For many deceivers have gone forth into the world who do not confess Jesus as the Christ coming in the flesh. This is the deceiver and the Antichrist." That closes out the quotation there. But then later on, the same author, writing in his Apocalypse, Doesn't use the word Antichrist, but you can easily tell who he's talking about. St. John in the Apocalypse describes the works of the Antichrist more in detail thus, I quote, "And there was given unto his mouth speaking great things and great blasphemies. And power was given unto him to continue for 42 months." That's another thing that Daniel said, as I remember when I read earlier of Daniel, he said something like this. He says, for example, "And he will be in power for a time and times and an anti-time." A time meant a year, 2 times, 2 more years, and a half a time. He'll be in power 3 years. God will allow him to rule 3 years and then destroy him. Here John says, the power will be given to him to continue for 42 months, 3.5 years. "And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues." Again, he can speak all languages, go anywhere. "And nations, all kindreds and tongues and nations. And all that dwell on the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life, the book of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world." A couple of things there. Those living on the earth are earthly people. That means they are not got their minds raised to God, where Christ is and the saints. They're immersed in natural and secular things, and of course they'll fall an easy prey to the Antichrist, because they're not after truth, they're not after holiness. And again, their names will not be written in the book of life, because they will be victims of the Antichrist, and they will not convert because they want the advantages and the perquisites that the Antichrist will give them. The Antichrist, if you've got his name on you, or his number, 666, will give you jobs, plenty of money, economic stability, everything you want. In other words, he's Lord of this world, and he will reward his own followers so that they have a very pleasant and happy, and shall you say, the life of country clubs in this world. See? Very, very pleasant. See? And they'll go along with him. Now, what does St. Paul say about the Antichrist? St. Paul testifies to the coming of the Antichrist in his second letter to the Thessalonians. It seems that after founding the church at Thessalonica and preaching the gospel there, St. Paul, as was his custom, moved on in his missionary journeys to found other churches in the Greco-Roman world. Word came to him from Thessalonica that his converts had quit working and were waiting around expecting the end of the world to happen at any moment. So they were hanging around the bistros, probably drinking wine or whatever they drank in those days, and no work, because what's the use of working? Any minute now the end of the world will come. It seemed that a false teacher, or many false teachers and enemies of St. Paul, had poisoned the teaching of St. Paul and created a misguided, unemployed, sin-exposed, idle community. So St. Paul was quick to write back to that church to correct this falsification of his teachings. And what did he write? I quote his second letter to the Thessalonians. "Let no one deceive you in any way, for the day of the Lord," that's the day of the final reckoning, "the day of the Lord will not come until the apostasy comes first, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and is exalted above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he sits in the temple of God and gives himself out as if he were God. Do you not remember that when I was still with you, I used to tell you all about these things?" So he says, get back to work. He who doesn't work should not eat. So Paul tells, here's what he calls the Antichrist. First, one of the conditions before he comes, there's got to be a general apostasy. That means Catholics, people who believed in Christ, now say, forget it. They're like Judas. They leave Christ, betray him. General, not an individual. In other words, worldwide. General apostasy. That's the first sign. And again, this Antichrist, he calls him the man of sin, the lawless one, the son of perdition. All of those are other titles of the Antichrist. So, Paul continues, though, in this same letter, and telling us what will happen when that wicked one gets control. And when this wicked one will be revealed, whom the Lord Jesus will slay with the breath of his mouth and will destroy with the brightness of his coming. This wicked one, his coming is going to be according to the working of Satan, with all power and signs of lying wonders, and with all wicked deception to those who are perishing, for they have not received the love of the truth that they might be saved. So what do you see here? Satan's going to give tremendous preternatural powers to the Antichrist. Some of the fathers tell us he'll call down fire from heaven. He may walk on water. He may cure people. But these are not miracles. He calls them lying wonders. Why? Because they come from the father of lies, Satan. They're not miracles. True miracles lead to God and to sanctity. But the wonderful things the Antichrist is going to do is going to lead people to hell. He's going to have the power of Satan given to him. And Satan, you know, the angels of this world, even evil angels, very powerful. One angel, as you know, just flew over the army of Sennacherib, as you read in Scripture, and killed 186,000 of his men. One angel. So you can imagine how Satan probably is even stronger than that. At least is the strongest of the demons, at least. So he will produce many lying wonders. And notice this: his power is in the coming of Satan, and he's a deceiver, a liar, just like Satan is. And he will get people that don't love the truth and destroy them. Now, that's Scripture. Now, what did I show some of the signs of the Antichrist when I wrote? I call them old signs of the Antichrist because they've been written about, and then later on I'll have new signs. There is a frightful general apostasy with us today. That is the falling away of believers, Christians and Catholics, from God, from Christ and from His holy church, prepared by false prophets, and we have them all over the place, false Christ, false theologians, dissident Catholics, bishops, priests, nuns, laity, and powerful positions. They are creating today an atmosphere of iniquity, abounding, and widespread confusion. World trouble, great tribulation such as was not from the beginning of the world until this time. And the gospel, another sign, the gospel is being preached in all the world for a witness unto the nations. And these are signs which come from Christ Himself. Now the fierce and lawless betrayal of Christ and His church is at work in the all-pervading malignant spirit of today. The East has created a massive concentration camp where organized militant atheism is institutionalized with a hatred of God and of Christ, while crushing under its tyranny more than 1 billion souls. And it's still progressing, trying to take over Nicaragua. It's reluctantly getting out of Afghanistan, we hope, we're not sure. But it will leave a communist government in there to continue its attempt to destroy the idea of God, even in the Muslims. Again, we say, the West is not much better. The West has lost its faith, adhering now to the bitch gods of libido, sex, pleasure, and succumbing to economic gluttony. Let's get rich. Let's get as much as we can in this world. The West is living a life, or rather dying a death, of soft atheism, choked by the cares, riches, and convenience of this world. It is pervaded by the spirit of ambition, the mother of all heresies, schism, sedition, revolution, and war. And this spirit is corroding the framework of society, the family, the state, and international communities. The age of the general apostasy, if one wants to look around, is here. There's no use trying to deny it. It's now openly attacking and persecuting the church, has even attempted, as we know, to kill the Holy Father. And by the way, we'll see a later brutality against sacred things near the end of the talk, right there in the city of Jerusalem, the holy city. There is an attempt to govern men and dominate, and this is in the West, dominate the world without God and religion. A humanistic dogma states that nations should have nothing to do with God or religion or truth. The age of the big lie is upon us, where propaganda and disinformation prosper and pose as history. Societies are built and run on the principle of utility, not on the principle of truth and justice. Indeed, experience, personal and social, not truth or justice, are accepted as the criterion of good living. Majority, not morality rule, attracts the masses. Majority, not morality rule. The Bible is reduced to being a myth, not the mysteries of the living God. You go on. These are some that I gave before, but we'll come to new ones. Catholic universities have loosened their bonds with the true teaching church and have even deliberately canceled out their Catholic connection in order to get state and federal funds. Today, besides their greed for monies, so-called Catholic universities have chosen intellectualism over Catholicism, scientism over faith, relativism over truth, immanentism over transcendence, subjectivism over reality, situationism in morals over moral integrity, permissivism over disciplinism, and disciplined sanctity. They've chosen anarchism over authority. These, I put them in a nutshell, but that's the way it is. The new Christianity now. What about that as the signs of the coming? New, it's not the Catholic Christianity. The new, I call it Dr. Marra and I made a show on that once, a TV show, and a lawyer in New York called us up and said, I've never seen a show so good. We had a half-hour TV show. We still have the tape somewhere. Mr. Roger McCaffrey, our president, has it. It was called The Roman Catholic Church and we use a key word. I'm trying to think of the word. And not liberal. We didn't use the word liberal. And the Church the Church of the World, it was called Church of the World. There's a better title there. As you know, when we do things, we do them perfectly. But there's a better title. It slips my mind. Well, we got a judge calling us up and said, I've never seen a distinction of what's happening in the church today as good as this. Judge Lee, his name was, the judge in New York. Said, I couldn't sleep last night. I got up, and of course, Manhattan Cable was showing our shows free, which get them to them free at night, 1 or 2 in the morning when everybody's... Of course, one nice thing about New York, it's the insomniac capital of the world. So he got up, and he said, my God, I put the TV on. There was this magnificent show. I couldn't get over it, and he called us up and wanted to meet us and everything. So, you see, a little bit of good is done. Well, anyway, the new church was like, we were contrasting with the Catholic Church. The new church, replacing the true Catholicism of the Catholic Church, has featured 5 major heresies. First, it has placed man at the center of religion. That's humanistic anthropomorphism. Forget God, we all get together. It's horizontal Catholicism, not vertical. Second, it opted for imminent salvation. Salvation's here in this world. Forget it. Heaven's here, not in the next world. Eternity, forget about. Rejecting the transcendence of heaven in eternity as man's final destiny. Third, it has reduced the Gospels to being economic documents in favor of the poor. Christ only wrote those documents for the poor, not for the rich or not for everybody. Marx gave that interpretation, and the new church accepted. That was 3. 4, the new evangelism. The church is really the welfare arm of the state. It's not a divinely founded organization which has an existence in time but will be perfected in eternity. No, it's just the welfare arm of the state. It should get rid of all its rituals. It should let anybody become a priest. It should let the state take over many of its functions and be subservient to the state. And finally, the new Christ. The new Christ is not divine. He's a man for others. He's a Che Guevara, a revolutionary, subverter. He's going to throw over all these high organizations, the superstructure which is rotted out, taking advantage of the poor. And in that superstructure is the Catholic Church. He's going to get rid of that. So, the grand subverter is Christ. The creators of these heresies and their followers are many antichrists. They've gone out from the church. These people that created this were Christians. They've gone out from the church. They're the many antichrists, getting the social womb of society rotted out so that eventually man will give birth to his own corrupt antichrist, and God will allow him to be punished by his own procreative iniquity. So there you have it. These people are the many antichrists spoken of by St. John, who said they have already gone out into the world. They are preparing such a corrupt social womb of mankind that from this evil womb man will produce a super Antichrist who will profit in attacking the Church of Christ by using the evil harvest that will come from the seeds of heresy, dissension, superstition, violence, terrorism, And these are the seeds that have been planted by these heretics of modern times. Now, the new signs of the Antichrist, updating the shadows. New signs added to what we've seen. And I haven't given all of the old ones, it would take too long. But the evil corruptions preparing for the coming of the Antichrist continue to pile up. Since relating those already mentioned, which is the first part is a review, so that you can get the context of what's happening now. Since relating those already mentioned, and more that I had no space to mention, there are these new signs of the shadows, or shadows of the coming Antichrist. First, somebody said earlier in the talk that the bishops are not speaking out. Would that were true. I don't know about you people. I don't know if you've read the thing on condoms. They're speaking out. I don't know if you read the thing on feminism. They're speaking out. I don't know if you read the thing yesterday in New York Times with Bernadine saying we're against the protective nuclear weapons to save the country. No, that's wrong. That's immoral. Would that they weren't speaking out. Or, if they speak out, would that they were speaking out the truth. As a matter of fact, they're speaking out and making things worse. 50 Catholic bishops, 50, I'm not naming them all, staying to fact, have come out with a document, Many Faces of AIDS, that is basically, fundamentally, morally flawed. This doctrine appeals to the principle of pluralism. By the way, we're now being ruled by pluralism. I don't think you knew that, did you? You're not being ruled by the principle of justice, of holiness, of truth, of fidelity to God. No. We've discovered a new principle in the church. See, it's called pluralism. And remember that now. You ought to form pluralist clubs. I mean, and you know, be a charter member. They're charter members. They're giving it to us all the time. This doctrine appeals to the principle of pluralism for the justification of supplying information about condoms, and it goes on, I quote, and other methods. So there must be a lot of immoral methods on how to have safe sex. Can you imagine bishops who are the spiritual guides to bring us to sanctity saying, well, I'll tell you what, I'll show you how you won't get AIDS. See this thing? It's a condom. And everybody knows what a condom's for. Only for sin. So, here's how it's used. Here's what it's for. So to save physical life by not getting AIDS, they're willing to give information on how to commit mortal sin and lose your soul. I mean, what on earth are these bishops doing? Whose side are they on? They're on the Antichrist side. They may not know it. They may not intend it. But confused thinking can lead you to hell. So what happens? Other methods. So they're supplying information about condoms and other methods for the purpose of avoiding AIDS, which leads to physical death. But this procedure, and of course Rome came out against it, this procedure is contrary to consistent Catholic moral teaching. Pluralism, which is a sociological problem, is attempting to solve a moral problem. Thus, a serious spiritual evil, namely mortal sin by using condoms, is tolerated by the bishops who should be the shepherds of leading souls to sanctity. Why? In order to avoid a serious physical evil, namely the death of the body. We're all going to die anyway. But if you die in mortal sin, it's the second death that our Lord told us to watch out for. Beware of him who, after having killed the body, can give you the second death by casting you into hell. Apparently the bishops are not aware of that second death anymore. They're losing their faith. This is a clear case of the secularization of minds of clerics, of bishops, of episcopal bishops. But the death of the soul is allowed to avoid the death of the body. Values here are topsy-turvy in the very secularized thinking of 50 bishops. Spiritual death is preferred to physical death. Then, too, once you set this principle, watch. Then, too, the misuse of principle as a principle for solving moral principles sets a dangerous precedent. For it could be applied to many other problems. Take, for example, this. Supposing abortion becomes pretty prevalent and people like it, then the bishops can give information on how to use abortion and justify that on the principle of pluralism. See, once you use a principle, it can spread to any moral problem you got. Also, about this, these are all signs of the coming Antichrist. Another evil is the manner in which this document was promulgated. It circumvented the scrutiny and voting power of the full body of bishops. This practice threatens to usurp the teaching authority of the bishops individually and collegially. Moreover, this tactic fully justifies the anxiety that Rome raised at the Extraordinary Synod in Rome in 1985 concerning the teaching authority of national conferences of bishops. They have none. National Conference of Bishops do not have a mandatum docendi, and yet they're teaching something which Catholics don't realize if they take it on. It's a scandalous doctrine. For these reasons of immorality and dissension, the document caused, for these reasons of the immorality and the dissension, the document caused, and the scandal it has given this document in many faces of age, this document, we say, should be either corrected or, better still, rejected. It is intolerable to allow the moral judgment of the faithful to remain unresolved, thus affecting a geographical morality in which one diocese condemns condoms and another diocese permits them. And they're always evil because they only lead to sin. There's no other purpose for them. To the scandal and confusion of the faithful Catholics, this new episcopal error and tragedy is a new sign, a new corruption, a new shadow of the coming of the Antichrist. Do we stop there? Yesterday, I got the document. It's 146 pages, both sides, typed both sides, on the new sin of sexism. Because the whole document reads like this, and it's a mouthful. Partners in the mystery of redemption, a pastoral response to women's concerns for church and state. So you men dare not open your mouth. It's only for women here. 146 pages. Again, that silly, impossible blindness of intellect, unable to make distinctions. You're going to read something here that you just boggles the mind. This is coming from 45 bishops now. It's not the whole conference. They're hitting the conference with another document. In a new letter put out by the Committee of American Bishops, 45 or 50 of them, 5 of them might have been on vacation anyway. These bishops have discovered a new sin for the church. Now, we've been in how long has the church been going? 2,000 years. And you know what? The 10 Commandments didn't give us all the sins. Neither did the Bible. We've just discovered the sin of sexism. It's the 11th commandment. Thou shalt not have sexism. And you'll see they don't even know what the word means, as we'll bring it up. Some guy said, hey, look, sexism's a nice sounding word. He didn't say, let's analyze what the substantial concept of it. Hey, look, we're writing a letter for these bishops, probably some of the whiz kids in the middle management. The bishops can't be bothered writing letters. Hey, listen, we've got slaves over here, clerical slaves. Let them write it. They've got the degrees. So they came up with the sin of sexism, and it's so stupid that really, I know if Bill Marra marked that paper, it would be a minus F. It wouldn't be F. It would be a minus F. Because he's a philosopher. See, he would just. Well, as you read it, you get intellectually nauseated, see. And you certainly come to another conclusion that we are living in a dark age of intellectual ability. Nobody thinks. They just emote. A word sounds good. Hey, let's use it, fellas. Never mind what it means. We'll give it a meaning, see. So it's what Teresa was saying earlier today, the poisoning of language, simply to say things that sound nice, They float through the air beautifully, and somebody hears it, isn't he wonderful? You say, what does it mean? I don't know. That's why he's wonderful. I can't understand him. See, the Latins have an expression, omne ignotum pro magnifico. Everything that I don't understand must be wonderful. See, and so you get a German professor coming in, he's rattling out these sentences, and one word sticks to the other, and they come out, everybody's looking like that, and even the Jesuits like this when Colorado would come. And he'd have these young Jesuits with pad in hand running around. If he walked across the stage, they'd be right behind him writing down. And you say to the fellow, what did he say, by the way? I don't know. I got it all down here. But wasn't he wonderful? See, in other words, St. Paul tells us, beware of those that are always growing in knowledge and never arriving at the truth. The guys that write these documents are the very guys to beware of. So let's go through it. The document, where is it? All right. We've discovered a new sin. What is the nature of this newfound sin? I'm quoting now. Women reject sexism, which makes judgments about people based exclusively on their sex, rather than on knowledge of their character, ability, or achievement. Close quotes. I've made some judgments based on sex, haven't you? See? I said, well, wait a minute, you can't marry a man, you got to marry a woman. Judgment based on sex, what's wrong with it? See? It's so stupid, the document. Wait till we see what happens. Here's what comes from the Archdiocese. And by the way, in that document they quote diocese. Here's what comes from the Archdiocese of Milwaukee. Wonderful. Who do you think thought the word sexism up? He did. He says this: Women ask, when will they be valued for their personal attributes without being relegated to specific sexual roles? Now listen to the specific sexual roles. Virgin. It's an insult to call somebody a virgin. And by the way, men can be called virgins too. So that's a stupid thing. And Mary's a virgin. We glorify a Blessed Mother for being mother and virgin. So you see, they make the word virgin now a word of sexism. That's absurd. Or again, mother, another word. It's sexism. So when you say mom, hey, you're using sexism. Cut it out. You can't say that word in the diocese of what's his name? Wheatland, yeah. Okay. And then, of course, the next one is this: when will women stop being called temptress? They tempt other men. Well, I guess they'll never be stopped being called that, those that do the tempting, as long as they keep tempting men. And that happens, it's part of life. So why should we stop calling a temptress if that's what she is, see? This is a document from bishops now. Here we have the confused thinking of writers who cannot make simple distinctions. There are roles which are distinctively female and roles that are distinctively male. Being a mother is distinctively female, a female role. Do I commit a sin when I evaluate a woman as being a good mother? I'm using sexist language. Or when I evaluate a woman as being not too good a woman, a good mother. She's not a good mother. That's either a fact or it isn't a fact. So why can't I use the language? Again, does one commit the sin of sexism when he evaluates a man as being virile or as being effete? Men are virile, some men are effete. Some men are wimps, some men are lions. See? What's wrong with it? Is that sexism? Sin is not, and here is where they make their mistake. The whole thing is so stupid. The presupposition is that all sin comes from sex. I have a bit of information for the writers of these guys. Angels are sexless, and they committed sin. So the sin of sexism, they don't have any sex. All the devils in hell were one time holy angels until they rebelled. They committed the sin of rebellion. It's not the sin of sex. They didn't have any bodies. They have no bodies, see? So they're here trying to say that everything that we're doing wrong is due to... I mean, come on. I mean, they're really disciples of Sigmund Freud. That's what they are. Freud is reduced... He's the guy ahead of them that reduced everything to sex. Sin is never rooted in sex. It is rooted in the evil will, as our Lord said. Sin doesn't come out of what you put in your body. Sin doesn't come out even of the body. Sin comes out of the will. Murders, adulteries, bad will. That's a spiritual faculty. That's what causes sin. God created the marvelous powers of sex. They're not the cause of sex. Therefore, it can't be a sin of sexism. They're the occasion. For example, my mouth is not the cause of libel. It's the instrument that a bad will uses to libel somebody else. So it can be a good power that God gives us, can be the occasion through which a bad person, a person of bad will, commits a sin with that faculty. By using the powers of sex in adultery, it's not the sin of sexism. It's the sin of adultery. The abuse of sex by a bad person who wants to violate God's law on how to use sex powers. Sin is never rooted in sex. It is rooted in the evil will. God created the marvelous powers of sex. Hence, they cannot be the source of sin. But their abuse is the occasion of sin. Because of the bad will of the person who decides to abuse the excellent sex powers God gave him. If he decides to rape a woman, it's not the sin of sexism, it's the sin of rape. We got concrete words for those things. Why? In the sin of rape, there is included in its definition the violence of a bad will. The will is there. In sexism, I don't see any will. It's an abstract word. Where's the will? Do you find a bad will in the word sexuality? No. Sexuality is a perfectly good word. It's indifferent. Now, if I say promiscuous sexuality, I add an adjective which brings in the will, promiscuous sexuality, then you've got sin. Or if I say homosexual sexuality, an adjective, then you've got sin. But sexism is not a sin. It's absurd. These people can't think. It's sad. I don't know if you can bring them back to school, but I think right now their brains are completely worn out. They haven't tried to think. It would cause probably some sort of a mental explosion. They have, you've heard about rigor mortis, huh? Well, they have rigor mentis. That's what's happening today. And these are our guides, our leaders, and this is another sign of the Antichrist. Again, hence the following statements in the document seem very foolish, since founded on a false premise that sex is the cause of sin. Let me quote some of the statements. Sexism creates barriers to communication. Or the reason people are not talking to each other is sexism. You didn't know that, did you? Huh? It's not because one guy robbed $100 from the other guy. It's sexism. Behind that robbery is sexism. See? How absurd can you get? There are a lot of other reasons why people don't communicate. Not sex necessarily. See? Certainly it's not sexism. It might be the abuse of sex powers. But anyway, these are their statements now. I'm not making it up. Sexism hampers collaboration and contributes to pornography, violence, and prostitution. Well, I thought, for example, pornography was a sin in itself. It's an abuse of sex. Sexism is not a reality. It's an abstract word. It's the bad will of someone abusing his sex that goes into pornographic literature or into prostitution. But this is what our great leaders are telling us. Another thing is, the sin of sexism depersonalizes women. I thought evil persons depersonalize other persons. Sexism is an abstraction. Have you ever been depersonalized by sexism? It just doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. Now, a person is depersonalized by being raped. A person is depersonalized, for example, by committing the sin of adultery. Two people are depersonalized. But it's the sin of misusing the power. Sexism doesn't exist except as a word. It's an abstraction. The sin of sexism depersonalizes women. And by the way, they stopped there. And I put in parentheses, apparently it does not depersonalize men. So you're lucky. You guys are lucky. Sexism only depersonalizes women, see? All right. Again, I'm quoting. It makes them objects to be possessed and used. Well, a hammer's an object to be possessed and used. Is there any sexism there? It's silly. It's degrading a person to be possessed and used is not the sin of sexism. It's another type of, it's the sin of domination. It's the sin of prejudice. It's the sin of tyranny. It's not the sin of sexism. It's so stupid here. Again, it dismisses women as unimportant, as mere subordinates or appendages. Well, that's when you make women slaves. If you reduce women to it's slavery that does that, not sexism. But try to teach these people. I don't think you can succeed. Then I'm talking. It's hate, contempt, prejudice. These are what create barriers to communication. Let's call them by their concrete words. They've existed since Adam fell. The church has been teaching us. They're forbidden in the Ten Commandments. Why come up with another word to confuse the faithful? A word that doesn't have meaning. Hate, contempt, prejudice, not sex. Enmity and lust hamper collaboration and contribute to pornography, not sex. Pride and domination reduces men and women to being objects to be possessed and used, not sex. All sins degrade man, not sex as such. You may as well say that your vision degrades you. Sex is another one of your powers. Your sight is another one of your powers. You may as well say one of the worst sins in the world today is hearingism. You're hearing with your ears. That's stupid. Take a power of the body and say another sin of the world is, let's say, footism. See? I mean, it's so stupid. This is what we got. This is what we got for leaders. All right, it is just such confused thinking that leads the bishops to encourage the evil of feminism among those women who hate the nature and vocation that God gave women. Perhaps the most distorted form of womanhood to appear in history is the current fad of feminism. Indeed, it can be called a perversion, for it is. For to pervert something is to overturn it, to make it unnatural. Feminism, in its most raw and recent form, is the denaturalization of the beautiful gift of femininity. Now, the stupid bishops didn't know how to make the distinction between feminism and femininity. And I'm going to read you a section where you never knew this, but you're going to learn it today from the bishops. There's such a thing as Christian feminism. That's a new one on me. Feminism has in its concept the evil of not wanting to be the way God made you. You want to be a man. What the bishops say, these 45, I'd like to get their names and write them a letter. There is such a thing as, I'll quote it in just a minute for you. They don't ever, as far as I can see, I never found the word femininity there, which is really the beautiful gift God has given women. Its misconceptions, the bishops, and unnatural way of living, namely feminism, have become the inversion of all that is natural and sublime to women. Two major currents of thought are discernible in the thunderous chorus of conflicting voices advising women of today and forming women of tomorrow. Number one, be free. Come on, you women. When are you going to get the spirit of liberation? The flag is raised. Be free. Get out of the house. Get out of the house. Stop cleaning diapers. Yeah, that's a form of, you know what? And this is, of course, we'll get the founder of feminism, by the way, and the bishops don't even know that. That's how stupid they are. Is a woman by the name of Simone de Beauvoir, who was the mistress of Jean-Paul Sartre. Back in 1945, I think, she wrote a huge book called The Second Sex. That launched feminism. And she hates everything the church says about the family. She wants to get rid of the family. In fact, in order to give an example that the family is evil, she lived with Sartre as his mistress. They never got married. They're against the family. Well, she launched feminism. And the bishops haven't got the slightest idea that Betty Friedan is right out of the camp, right out of the, what do they call it again, the stable of Simone de Beauvoir. And they don't know anything about it. Who does their study for them? I don't know. Be free, that's the first thing. You must be released from feminine bondage and feminine affectivity, feminine delicacy, and receptivity. Thus, feminism would be really, according a disveiling of the femininity, disveiling, a disrobing of a woman so that she doesn't have these marvelous graces that God gives her. She is now denatured, as it were. And then the second is, and come on, be true to your nature. You can't be a woman. You gotta enter competition with man. You can't be, the second sex. You gotta be. Oh yeah, incidentally, part of this development of this thought is this, that according to even some priests, one that I heard about today, there are three forms of naturally good sexual life. There is the form of masculine sex. There is the form of feminine sex. But the highest form is homosexual sex, which unites the goods of each, and it's a much higher form than either one or the other. This was created by the homos, see, and by feminism, see. So now you have three, what they want to call three good options in sexual life. Either be macho, or be feminine, or be homosexual, lesbian, if you want. See how they corrupt things, see. So I quoted there, see. We're on page, we will finish this today, so hold on. And be true to woman's nature, quote. Now that was the end of that quote. But this is the warped idea of claiming an identity between the sexes. There looms here again the ugly action of that first temptation which the woman had so desperately had in the Garden of Eden when she grasped for an illicit goal. Eve grasped for being like God on Satan's terms. Feminists want to be like man on Satan's terms. This activity transfers her, the woman of today, from the garden of sublime transcendence in the femininity of self-donation to God and femininity of self-donation to her husband, transcends her from that beautiful garden up into the graveyard of rebellion against God and hatred of her husband, because she's not masculine. Yet despite the fact that feminism is an evil ideology, here's what we read in the bishop's letter. And I'm quoting now. Sexism, directly opposed to Christian humanism and Christian feminism, that's the bishop's now, not me, is the erroneous belief or conviction or attitude that one sex, male or female, is superior to the other in the very order of creation or by the very nature of things. Why I quote that is the fact that the bishops created a new form of virtue for women, namely Christian feminism. Now, what does a fellow like my friend, very good writer, he's here somewhere hiding. What did I do with that? It's right here. Oh yeah. What does my friend Chesterton say about feminism? In his answer to feminists, Chesterton defines a feminist as someone who dislikes the chief feminine characteristics. Chesterton goes on. Chesterton was strongly against the so-called, quote, liberation of women. He fought for femininity against feminism. The bishops are fighting for feminism. What good are they doing women? None. They're leading them astray. Now, what are some of these marvelous things, traits of womanhood? It's that wonderful talent that God gave women of receptivity, which is not to be confused with passivity. This receptivity implies a special talent for listening, for loving, for opening oneself to another person, for following that person, taking care of children with love. The male nature is particularly geared towards activity. To understand the greatness of receptivity now that the woman has, we should realize that toward God, all creatures, male and female, are and should be receptive. But in this virtue of receptivity, the female, the woman, outlasts and outguns the male. Why? God made her that way. Mary is the perfect feminine woman. Be it done unto me according to thy word. Perfect receptivity. You get receptivity, for example, which is not a passive thing, but an active thing, joining oneself to God, joining oneself with love and fidelity and humility to one's husband or children. You get that again in what St. Paul said when he was knocked off his horse and he said, he hears his voice, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? He says, Lord, what will you have me do? Receptivity. Again, when Samuel hears God speaking to him, he says, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. It's a positive virtue of giving oneself to God, giving oneself in love and in humility and in concern and care. This is what a woman has. That's femininity. That's what Mary has. She comes to us because she's receptive to our terrible danger today to be punished by a chastisement for our sins, and she's concerned. She doesn't want that to happen to us as a mother. She's the mother of all. And she said that to Juan Diego at Guadalupe. She says, am I not here, your mother? Why are you worried? I am the mother of all, she said. So that's the wonderful virtue that God has given to women. The bishops never discovered it. It was gone. They gave them feminism instead of femininity. Notice that impossible phrase, Christian feminism. You might just as well say, well, let's see. I guess there's Christian homosexuality. Contradiction in terms. Or maybe there's Christian lesbianism. Contradiction in words. Christian feminism is a contradiction in words. Feminism is evil. You can't put the word Christian with it if you're following Christ. This is a contradiction in terms. So feminism is a perversion of femininity and cannot in any valid way be called Christian. It is an evil. So much for the confused thinking of the authors of this document. Moreover, feminism as an evil ideology was launched by Simone de Beauvoir, the fallen away Catholic, by the way, who became an atheistic existentialist and a mistress of atheist philosophy, Jean-Paul Sartre. Madame de Beauvoir's book, The Second Sex, became an instant bestseller. When launched, it was 1953. In it, she accuses the Catholic Church of making women slaves to children. I don't know if mothers realize this. They are slaves to children, to husbands, to homes, to estates, to country, to church. They are enslaved in what she called an eternal fixation of slavery. So if you go rushing out here carrying the banner of liberation, it's not my fault, it's Simon's fault. She holds that Catholicism will not allow women to transcend themselves beyond. What a strange idea she has to transcendence. For us, transcendence is to go beyond the goods of natural human nature, into the goods of supernatural life, to God. To get out of ourselves in prayer and in sacrifice and in sacramental living into the presence of God. She, again, destroys the meaning of the word transcendence. For her, transcendence is to get out of the menial jobs that a woman has as a housewife. Get out of that. Get out and get a career. That's transcendence. To me, that's cop-out. That's not transcendence. She's equating cop-out from being a mother and putting the children in the care home, wherever they put them. They put them in libraries now. Those kids are going to be geniuses. They're reading all the books in libraries. They put them there and take care of them there. And run out to get a career and get a lot of money. That's a cop-out from motherhood. That's not transcendence. But that's the low meaning of transcendence that Simone de Beauvoir gives. So she says, she holds that Catholicism will not allow women to transcend beyond her servitude to furthering the transcendence of the male. And the transcendence of the male is this. He doesn't go to God. He goes out and makes more money. Gets to be president, gets to be, for example, head of the firm, anything but a supernatural role. So all transcendence is on the natural plane for Madame de Beauvoir because she's an atheist, see. She's an atheist. So the church will not allow women to transcend from a servitude to furthering the transcendence of her male, to help him to extend the range of his activities. That's transcendence for women. From Mary on to all the women saints in the Catholic Church, and I'm quoting now de Beauvoir, women must prostrate themselves to the gaze of God and the angels. And here's another thing. You didn't know that there was such a thing. That's called the masculine gaze. Women are subjected. I didn't know God had a sex. God's pure spirit. He's not masculine. Christ is masculine because he's the Son of God, took on human nature. But God's gaze as God is not masculine or feminine. It is divine, a divine gaze, which is beyond matter. But anyway, she says, women from all the saints, Saint Teresa of Avila, the Little Flower of Jesus, you name the wonderful saints, they are all now condemned to prostrate themselves to the gaze of God, the angels, and the church of saints, which gaze is a masculine gaze. The church maintains family ties in order to keep women enslaved. With the ideology of feminism, de Beauvoir aims at destroying the family as a natural and sacramental community. So that's the new sign, another new sign of the coming Antichrist. The family is now directly under attack. And get this, they've got the bishop using their language. Christian feminism. Women have to fight for that, which means a contradiction in terms. Bishops who are supposed to be sanctifying the family are leading people to a false idea of what a woman should be. All right, and watch this again. Her feminist followers like Betty Friedan in her book, Feminine Mystique, Aroused Housewives, that's the name of her book, Feminine Mystique, Aroused Housewives, what do? They lead the feminism to extreme, they lead women to extreme discontent with their lot and urge them to fulfill themselves not as mothers, but as careerists in public life. That leaves the children abandoned. Women are to challenge men and guard against the threats of masculine competition. Moreover, in this document, the bishops continue, and this comes on later on in the document. The Pope said, forget ordination of women. Not that document. Here's what it says near the end of the document, and these people are really rebels. Moreover, in this document, the bishops continue to call for dialogue, reflection, and they use this word, even controversy, in regard to the ordination of women. Now, what kind of bishops are they? They're disobedient to the Pope. The Pope said it will never be given. They think, oh, we'll get it when this Pope dies. He's a Polish Pope. He doesn't understand. See, we'll get somebody else that'll make us all become priests. But no, this is going to be published, and it's right there. I've been reading it. It's a terrible document, but anyway, I'm just recovering from spiritual nausea as I tell you about it. See, they say this. They call for dialogue, reflection, even controversy in regard to the ordination of women. And I say this, even though the Holy Father said this will never happen. Thus the bishops are raising false hopes and spreading scandal, helping the arrival of the Antichrist, who will rule in the confusion of such that's an apostasy, a form of apostasy, to go against the Holy Father on something which he told them, don't even bring up again, there's no chance for it. Another new shadow of the coming Antichrist is the surrender of so-called colleges and universities to demonic standards. Georgetown University has just agreed to treat practicing homosexuals on campus just like all the other normal students. They have to get money, places to meet, positions of honor, everything the normal gets. Now, isn't it wonderful to say a Catholic parent, should I send my daughter to Georgetown? Oh, yeah, they respect homosexuals there. Go ahead. Send her there, you know. Homosexuals, another naturally good way of life. They get money. You can join their clubs. But that's supposed to be Catholic now? That's what they're going to do. They surrendered because they lost their case in a lower court, and they haven't got the courage to appeal. If the Antichrist came today, or Satan said today, how can I prepare best for my coming Antichrist? He couldn't have. He said, leave the Catholic universities alone. They're doing a great job. I don't even have to send my demonic messengers on campus. They're doing a good job. I'll send them somewhere else. See, I'll send them maybe into convents and whatnot. But forget the Catholic university. They're killing themselves. They're doing a great job for me. I'm not going to send. I'm not going to send Wormwood there. Waste a good demon like Wormwood on the campus of Georgetown. Forget it. I've got enough agents there doing a great job. Again, then too, Catholic U has just agreed to take back heretic Father Charles Curran because he won his case. Now, he will not teach in theology. Well, who cares? He's going to teach maybe in sociology, and all his evil doctrines students will flock to his class. He won his victory. He can thumb his nose at the Holy Father. I'm back, And again, they lost their case. And instead of appealing, just like the Milquetoast Church, they've surrendered. So back goes Charlie, good time Charlie, the Catholic youth. He was dismissed as a bad Catholic, another sign of the coming Antichrist. He was dismissed. He's still a priest. They never threw him out of the church. Oh yeah, Charles says Mass every day, I think. I don't know whether he believes, but he can say it if he wants. He's never been excommunicated. They just tapped him on the wrist and said you can't teach Catholic theology. So that's another sign that you see right there. Again, now, he can teach in another department than religion, than theology. But his errors and rebellious spirit will contaminate his students to imitate him and follow the line leading to apostasy and the arms of the coming Antichrist. Then, too, the religion or old heresy is taking hold of the Western world. We then have another sign, the proliferation of the New Age movement. And we have some wonderful, famous people. Shirley MacLaine, a New Ager. You've seen the movies, A New Ager, the movie actress who likes to write about her spiritual struggles, says her entire life was changed on the day when she was able to leap about, shouting tearfully, I'm God! I'm God! Everybody's God in the New Age movement. And that's spreading like mad throughout this country. A new sign, shadow of the coming Antichrist. She also believes in reincarnation, and that's spreading like wildfire, see? This religion arises from the pseudoscience of astrology. Man is born again in a reincarnation. Karma, K-A-R-M-A, is the law that determines how deeds in one life will affect the next. This religion is founded in Manichaean and Gnostic heresies, which are combined in the New Age religion. Tarot cards and mysterious crystals will tell one his or her destiny. Practically every local newspaper gives you your astrology. Where were you born? People now ask you, well, not what was your birthday. Who were you? Are you a Libra? Yeah, or are you what are you? What are some? I don't know. See, are you a Leo? They don't ask you about, are you a Christian anymore? Forget it. See, you're not a Christian anymore. You're a New Ager now. See, voices from the past or mediums can summon up the spirits of the dead for grieving widows and shed light on problems. Incidentally, that's one reason God rejected Saul, because he forced a seance woman to call up from the dead the soul of Samuel the prophet. And Samuel came back and cursed them out for doing this and said, God's going to punish you. And God, because this is witchcraft, this is necromancy, calling up the dead to get knowledge of the future. And God rejected Saul. Saul was totally rejected by Almighty God. Why? He was consulting the underworld of the devil rather than God as to what he should do. Again, mediums claim they can attack the dead for thousands of years, and such spiritualism has a big revival in these times. Bored baby boomers without a firm grounding in Christianity are buying into necromancy and alchemy. One journalist called the New Age yuppie spirituality. So if you want to be with it, yuppie spirituality. Another one labeled it post-hippie religion. See, they're with it, though, you know that. New Agers think their practice will bring peace and harmony to the world. But why, if these techniques and disciplines are really powerful, why wasn't the world transformed a century ago when these things were believed? There are 5,000 cults, another sign of the coming Antichrist, in the United States, in this country, and an estimated 30 million Americans attending them. As members of these cults, another sign of the coming Antichrist. In the 4th century, St. Augustine and other bishops denounced all magic as heretical. The Church has not altered her view since, but many of her members have apostatized to the cults in the New Age. And whether the present movement will last or reappear in 20 years with a new nomenclature, that's being a good New Ager, that's up to the stars. Or is it in the cards? Another good New Age critic. No, it's not up to the stars. It's not in the cards. It's in the souls of apostates, the ignorant, the non-believers of this world who are preparing the coming of the Antichrist. Again, the other day I read, and I'm going to read you something in a little while. Again, another side of the coming Antichrist. This incident took place in the West Bank recently. In the West Bank there recently, there occurred this incident. The Israeli army beat up a Catholic priest for no reason whatsoever. They gave no reason. And then when the 7 parishioners protested and were going to have a demonstration against this violence against the Catholic priest. Now this is in Ramallah on the West Bank. When they protested, the army came in, arrested them, and while the people were at Mass, shooed them all out of the church by spraying the church with live ammunition. Now this is the Israeli army now. The people we spend millions of dollars to keep alive. They sprayed it. Then, what happened? It seems that the beating was the Israelis' reprisal against the Holy See for appointing the first local Palestinian Arab Patriarch of Jerusalem. His name is Miceli S.J, who at the time of this beating up, 2 priests were beat up, and the church was gunned down with the people running for their lives out of church. He was being at that time ordained by the Holy Father in Rome. There's no other reason was given. Now, the journalist who witnessed this and wrote the story by the name of Ivan Kaufman says that 2 major news organizations refused to carry the story when he informed them of this. Why? Because the Israeli authorities threatened to destroy their equipment in printing, and so they backed off. And he says the reason they gave, when he checked out, he said, oh, it's old news. Well, as Joe Sobran, who writes the story, says, it wasn't news at all. If news is not printed, it's not old, it's not new. It's only news when it's printed. So it was suppressed news. See, now Sobran says, imagine what would happen if a Christian militia beat up a rabbi and shot up a synagogue it would quickly hit the front pages and airways throughout the West. Another sign of the coming Antichrist is the media lynching that the Holy Father gets from the Zionists in this country, because he has to meet. It's more than because he has to meet. The Waldheim. It's also because the Holy See will not recognize the state of Israel, which is at war with all the Arab states. They hate Catholicism. They got more power. That's another sign of an area that the Antichrist will get control of and use, as he's using right now, although he's not here yet. Satan's using it to persecute the church, to beat up priests, to desacralize churches, and to suppress news of this terrorism and violence that's going on against the church. So that's another sign of the coming Antichrist. These are updated signs. Again, you have the exaggerated nationalism of today, which is Zionism. They want to build a naturalistic, atheistic state, which is just like the state that the Nazis built, or the state that Mussolini tried to build. Fascism was an exaggerated nationalistic state. Nazism was. Communism is an exaggerated international ideology. They want to conquer the whole world. Zionism is an exaggerated, racist, nationalist state. Just taking in the Jews, they want to try to found a naturalistic utopia. But every naturalistic utopia becomes a totalitarian police state. We saw it in Nazism, we saw it in fascism, we see it in exaggerated communism, and now we're seeing it in Zionism. And that's a new sign of the coming of the Antichrist. Again, we have the vandalism of graffiti. Just look around where you take sacred places and write anything there. Doesn't make sense. It's violence against the intellect and the eye. You have the vandalism of and that is the biggest one, I think, today. The vandalism of the secularization of the thinking of the bishops. And you saw that in those documents. This is sad. They need prayer. Somebody's got to wake them up. I don't know who it's going to be. So what's happening is we've moved from the secular city of Harvey Cox, when God is pushed out, into the sacrilegious city of Jesus Christ Superstar. And now we're into the condom city of the bishops. And what else? What's the new one they have? Into the city of feminism. Where are we going? Down to hell, unless we change this back by prayer, sacrifice. We're not condemning people for their person. We're not even bringing in their motives, but we're saying what they're doing is the devil's voice, whether they realize it or not, and they're preparing for the coming of the Antichrist. We, in these meetings, through the rosary, and our prayers, and our sacrifices, and our writings, and our evangelization of others, by getting out and standing up for the faith and talking about it, we have to turn back the clock. So, thanks for listening, and God bless you. How'd it go, all right? Yeah.